10 unexplained discoveries that scare scientists. Whether engraved in caves or doodled in the walls of toilets, drawings have always been one of the means to express something. While doing these things at a large scale isn't that much of a big deal these days, it must have been a tall ordeal of our ancestors. And yet, they've done it! As early as 500 BC, the Nazca lines are geoglyphs engraved in the soil of the Nazca Desert in southern Peru. The Nazca people created these gargantuan drawings by removing 12 to 15 inches of rock from the desert floor. Centuries later, the Nazca lines have remained mostly intact, thanks to minimal wind, rain, and erosion. Since its discovery in the 1920s, experts have always been puzzled about the meaning of these geoglyphs. Some say the Nazca lines formed a massive astronomy book in the landscape, while others theorize the figures are part of the Nazca people's religious activities. Another theory even points out the possibility that extraterrestrial beings played a role in creating these drawings. After all, they encompass nearly 450 square kilometers of land. It would be challenging overseeing the creation of the Nazca lines without a vantage point up in the skies. Whatever the answer is, nobody knows to this day. Number 9. Dendera Light. Inside the Hathor Temple at Dendera, Egypt, are 3 stone reliefs that show the Dendera Light. It is an image composed of a bulb-like container, a lotus flower, a snake, a pillar, and a barge. Supposedly, the whole thing depicts Harsamtus, symbolized by the snake inside a container, which is said to be the womb of the Egyptian goddess of the sky, Nut. At least, that's the consensus among Egyptologists. However, a Norwegian electrical engineer proposed that the image actually depicts rudimentary lighting. Apparently, the bulb really is a light bulb, with the snake as the filament and the lotus flower as the socket. Meanwhile, the barge underneath is supposed to be the cable. Another electrical engineer created a working model of the Dendera light. Also, the surviving Egyptian structures are said to lack soot, meaning the Egyptians probably used electrical lighting to work inside the temples. But then, no such device has ever been found so far. If it does exist, it will predate Thomas Edison's light bulb by centuries. Number 8. Mummy Cheese. Ancient Egyptian tombs are home to a lot of valuable, sought-after relics, like figurines and amulets. Surprisingly, they're also filled with food. Apparently, Egyptians used to stock tombs with food for the afterlife. One notable example is the tomb of Thamis, a high-ranking official during Egypt's early days. In 2018, researchers discovered the world's oldest cheese, placed inside a jar in Thamis' tomb. The tomb is said to be built during the 13th century BC, making the cheese around 3,300 years old. But how does it taste? As much as I'd love to report how a centuries-old cheese tastes like, I couldn't. For starters, we're talking about mummified cheese, which means it carries a curse. Just kidding. It does, however, contain traces of bacterium that can cause brucellosis, a disease coming from consumption of unpasteurized milk. Further analysis also revealed that the cheese was made of cow's milk and either goat or sheep milk. While we couldn't really predict how it tastes, maybe you could find something similar at your local supermarket. Better safe than sorry. Number 7. Earliest evidence of warfare? At around 10,000 years ago, something really violent happened in Kenya. Whatever it was, no one knows the specific details yet. In 2012, researchers unearthed 27 skeletons of men, women, and children in Narok, an archaeological site in Kenya. The good news is, the sediments from Narok's Lake Turkana preserved the bones. The bad news? The state of these skeletons are rather disturbing. The skeletons showed signs of blunt force trauma and projectile wounds, meaning the victims were probably clubbed to death or shot with arrows. Obsidian spear tips were found lodged in some skeletons. Some of them appear to have been bound, including a heavily pregnant woman with broken knees. In 2016, researchers from the University of Cambridge reported that the remains were from 9,500 and 10,500 years ago based on carbon dating, making them the earliest evidence of war among humans. While older remains of large-scale evidence have been found in other areas, the dating methods were allegedly not as reliable as the one used in the recent study. Regardless, this evidence points to one inescapable fact. We've been capable of violence since the early times. As a race, we humans haven't improved much in this aspect, have we? Number 6. Antikythera mechanism. The ancient times, Greeks had a penchant for engineering and technology. One notable device that came from that era is the ANTIKYTHERA mechanism. The device, believed to have been designed and constructed between 205 and 60 BC, was recovered in 1901 from a shipwreck in the Mediterranean Sea. However, since the whole thing wasn't exactly in good condition when it was first recovered, the world slept on for 5 decades. At last, in 1951, Yale University professor Derek J. DeSola Price expressed interest in studying the artifact. However, reconstructing it wasn't exactly a walk in the park. Fast forward to 2021. Researchers from the University College London finally cracked how it works, partly at least. We do know that the device can be used to predict astronomical positions and eclipses in advance. To understand how advanced the device was for its time, think of this. Until cathedral clocks from the medieval era were built, no other known mechanism matched its complexity. Think of it as the first analog computer. Still, the work is far from over. Currently, only 82 pieces or a third of the original device survive. While the true purpose of the ANTIKYTHERA mechanism is still a mystery, it does offer a glimpse of the ancient Greeks' technological prowess. Just imagine, if the Greeks were this advanced, what else could they have created? Reminder, by the way, let us know if you like what you're seeing so far by giving us a thumbs up. And if you want to watch more intriguing contents like this, do yourselves a favor and subscribe. Thanks a lot! Now let's get back in! Number 5. Mummy Juice. No, the mummy juice isn't exactly a flask of juice stored in a tomb for centuries. Back in 2018, archaeologists found a 2,000-year-old granite sarcophagus in Alexandria, Egypt. During that time, there was a speculation that it contained the remains of Alexander the Great, and that opening it would release a curse. Regardless, the archaeologists pried it open and found the remains of 3 skeletons, which were said to be those of soldiers. The remains were swimming in a pool of red liquid, which turned out to be sewage. While the so-called mummy juice didn't exactly look yummy, there were people from the odd corners of the internet who weren't exactly deterred. They believed that drinking mummy juice would imbue them with powers. Somebody actually started a Change.org petition to allow people to drink the red liquid from the sarcophagus. At the moment, the petition has 36,000 signatures. Naturally, experts discouraged people from doing so. Apparently, the mummy juice was potent enough to rot the skeleton's wrappings. And while no one has taken a sample of the red liquid for further study, it is highly likely to contain viruses and bacteria, which would make you feel not so good. Maybe this is the curse released from the tomb? Anyway, if you're craving so much for mummy juice, you may want to reconsider. Go ahead and have some cranberry juice instead. Number 4. LONGYOU Caves. In 1992, farmers from the Zhejiang province of China were draining water from ponds when they accidentally discovered the LONGYOU Caves, a collection of 24 sandstone caverns. The clay pots that archaeologists recovered dated to the Western Han Dynasty from 206 BC to AD 23, suggesting that the place is around 2,000 years old. However, the site's origins are shrouded in mystery, as there were very historical records mentioning it. And that's a shame. The caverns cover a total floor area of more than 30,000 square meters, with each cavern averaging more than 1,000 square meters in area and 30 meters in terms of height. What's more baffling is how on earth the place was constructed. The caverns were man-made and carved from sandstone. Chisel marks can be seen from the walls, indicating that the caverns were hand-carved. The whole place is nothing short of an engineering marvel, considering its size, the artistry that went into it. Moreover, it stood the test of time, as it showed no signs of damage. These days, Chinese products have the reputation of being inferior in terms of quality. Yet the Chinese could create a place that remains aesthetically pleasing and structurally sound, even after 2,000 years. And no one knows how or why. Number 3. Bending the second law of thermodynamics. Let's do a little recap about the second law of thermodynamics, just in case you were napping when the professor discussed this. It states that the entropy is an isolated system, increases over time, and is irreversible. In other words, heat flows from a warm object to a cold object. So, if you place your cup of hot matcha tea in a room of average temperature, the tea would eventually cool down and disperse the heat into the room, with both reaching equal temperature. But in 2018, Researchers from the University of Zurich in Switzerland were able to achieve the opposite. They managed to cool a piece of copper from over 100 degrees Celsius to below room temperature without using an external power supply. To accomplish the feat, they used a Peltier element, which is the same technology used in hotel rooms' minibars. Peltier elements are basically heat pumps that transform electric currents into temperature differences. Using the Peltier element connected to an electric conductor, they were able to create an oscillating heat current, in which heat flow between two bodies perpetually changed direction. In this case, heat temporarily flows from a colder object to a warmer object, further cooling the colder object. However, the researchers also proved that the process does not violate the second law of thermodynamics, since the change in entropy of the whole system increased with time. If you're worried about the things you've learned from physics class being wrong, please don't. We're not disrupting the foundations of science. Yet. Number 2. DROPA stones. The DROPA stones are a collection of circular stone discs that are 12,000 years old. In 1938, they were discovered during an expedition to the cave system of the Bayan Har Mountains, located on the border between Tibet and China. The disc, measuring up to 30 cm in diameter, contained a hole in the middle and a tiny hieroglyph-like markings, only visible through a magnifying glass. In 1958, a Beijing Academy professor named Chom Un-Nui began studying the stones. 4 years later, he concluded that the stones recounted the story of the DROPA aliens. These beings were said to have crash-landed near the caves of the Bayan Har Mountains 12,000 years ago, only to be hunted down by the local Ham tribes. Unfortunately for Nui, his findings received so much backlash that he exiled himself to Japan. Later on, some of the discs were allegedly shipped to Moscow for further study by a Russian scientist, Dr. Vyacheslav Zaitsev. His findings revealed that the disc contained a large amount of metallic substances, making them hard for ancient people to carve into. Moreover, several tests revealed that the stones might have been used as electrical conductors at some point. In 1974, Austrian engineer Ernst Wegerer allegedly found 2 DROPA stones displayed at the Banpu Museum in Xi'an. While the museum's manager could tell him nothing about the discs, she permitted him to photograph them. A few days later, both the DROPA stones and the manager were gone without a trace. That was the last time everyone ever heard about the discs, at least in public. Unfortunately, there's a possibility that the DROPA stones might be a hoax. For starters, there's no evidence that Chom Un-Nui existed. His name wasn't even a Chinese name. Also, there were no records of the 1938 Bayan Har Mountain expedition. Finally, the whereabouts of the caves where the discs were discovered are still unknown. Are the DROPA stones a figment of imagination or a well-kept secret? Let us know your thoughts via the comment section below. Number 1. Breaking the laws of physics. Last April 2021, scientists from the Fermilab in Illinois announced the result of the Mu-1G2 experiment. But before we get deeper into the results, let's talk about the muons first. Muons are subatomic particles considered to be cousins of electrons, only fatter, as in 207 times heavier. The behavior of all particles in the universe is explained mathematically using the so-called Standard Model of Particle Physics. Supposedly, the Standard Model could precisely predict the frequency of muons wobbling. In 2001, the Brookhaven National Laboratory in Upton, New York, ran an experiment by funneling muons through a giant electromagnet. Results showed that the muons didn't behave exactly like the Standard Model's prediction. Fast forward to 2021, the Fermilab scientists conducted their version of the Brookhaven experiment using the same giant electromagnet. Findings revealed that the muons wobble slightly faster compared to the Standard Model's predicted value. Expressed in terms of G-factor, this is the value based on the Standard Model. Meanwhile, here's the G-factor from Fermilab's experiment. While the difference between the values appears to be minuscule, it proves that something is missing from the current laws of physics. Yikes! There's no doubt that as a race, we humans have progressed a lot. But as it turns out, we know far less about the world than we think. The future would probably still be filled with a lot of head-scratching, confusion, and fear of the unknown. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comment section. If you like this video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. We appreciate you letting us know how we're doing as we'll learn how to grow the channel further. Also, subscribe and turn on the notifications to get front row seats to watch Canon's mind-blowing videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the next one.